seminar on semiotics, a tribute to John Deely on the 50th anniversary of his passing. Whether you are watching us live now or here on Zoom, I want to welcome you. Or if you are watching the recording on YouTube, I'd like to welcome you as well. So this collaborative international open scientific initiative and celebration connects a network of dozens of personalities and organizations coming from various environments and with different profiles, all working in unison towards the advancement and propagation of semiotic studies. Today's presentation is Semiotics and Architecture, the Dialogical Hope, Past and Future, by Professor Dr. Josep Muntañola Thornberg. Muchas gracias, Professor Josep Muntañola Thornberg, for accepting our invitation. We are also glad to receive here as a commentator of today's presentation, Professor Dr. Isabel Marcos. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. I have to mention that after the presentation and the commentary, all people participating here on Zoom are welcome to share commentaries, insights, and questions regarding the presentation. So allow me to introduce Professor Josep Muntañola Thornberg. So Josep Muntañola Thornberg is senior professor at the Polytechnic University of Catalonia, director of the Barcelona School of Architecture from 1980 to 1984, director of the Department of Architectural Projects between 1986 and 1992 and 1999 and 2010. Dr. Honoris Causa from Lusíada University of Lisbon, June 2005, and president of the Royal Academy of Fine Arts of St. Jorge. So, as I said, I'm very glad to receive here Professor Josep Muntañola Thornberg. Thank you so much, and you can start your presentation.
Nice to meet you. Okay, I think that I don't know how this works, if Isabel Marcos needs to start or I start myself. I don't know what you want to do.
No, la profesora Isabel comentaría en el final.
Al final, vale.
Sí, sí. Ah,
Yes.
sorry, I didn't
Y
understand.
William la presentará, por supuesto. La presentará.
Did you see the PowerPoint?
No.
No, Professor.
It's for that. That means that I need to see here. Talla. Here.
Yes, now we can see.
Now you can, no?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's okay. And you want the
Yes.
also to put this. Okay. See, okay. Then I start. Thank you for the invitation. This is a very interesting historical moment of crossing disciplines. I am working in architectural theories and architectural education in general in the University Polytechnic of Catalonia. I am retired 10 years ago, but I have more work now than when I was inside the school. I have a lot of students from different countries and a lot of work of analysis, because the moment is very interesting. And then the John Deely work that I know only for some international congresses or semiotics. I have no direct relation to him. But the ideas of Deely are very, at that moment, can be used for analyze the situation. Then, let me start very fast, because this can be very long. I would be as abstract I can do, and then we can talk at the end about the possibility of semiotics of architecture. That is the main topic. In the book Basics of Semiotics, that has different editions, Deely has a very intense academic dialogue about the philosophical status of semiotics in relation to the point of view of Bakhtin. That is the key point of the topic in this moment. In one way, he uses a lot of ideas of Bakhtin in one page, and in other pages, he said that he was totally wrong. Then it's a very nice presentation of the problem, because he's totally wrong or he's totally right. And then I know why, but it's not easy to see why this difficulty. Because, of course, the semiotic idea of Bakhtin about the verbal are creative for first time in a transmission process of communication, the dialogical core of Bakhtin analysis of linguistics in general, it's interesting for Deely. Deely is not coming from Bakhtin directly. He's coming from Santo Tomás analysis and medieval philosophical analysis of design. That is a very different thing, but not so different if you go deep in the point, because of course Bakhtin was related to neo-Kantian neo-Kantian group with different variations, but in some ways can be related. That is the thing that I will try to do today. The idea of innovation of the code through the process of communication is basic in Bakhtin and is used by Deely, but with the pragmatic analysis that he wants to do about he says that Bakhtin is wrong when he says there is no code. No, this is a very subtle differences, because in one way he accepts that there is no code, and in another sense he says that the code is needed. And then in the sense that Bakhtin was too against formalistic and was wrong. But this, in the whole theory, this is not a big problem. If you see that at the bottom, the central place of semiotics in social communication was accepted in the two. The only thing that you will see that there are some differences that, for instance, hermeneutics and semiotics, that was the point that is the reason of this, not misunderstanding, but this difficulty of combine semiotics with dialogics in the Bakhtian sense. Semiotics is unique in the human science that deals with the common roots between them and reveals the centrality of the relation to the totality of history, the centrality of history in relation to the totality of knowledge. That I put that in the workshop I am doing now a lot about design and history. Right? Then this, of course, is completely possible to agree with Bakhtin. From this viewpoint, the semiotic is the best tool of criticism, evaluate the works of art, music, and literature, where the theory of the mind and the contrast with the objective orders, that can be more related to mathematics, for instance, can be analyzed. Bakhtin will agree by calling it architectonics, that he never uses the concept of semiotics, Bakhtin, but uses the concept of architectonics and dialogics. But if you think deep conceptual meaning of that, you see there are a lot of points of view, a lot of analogies. This criticism will produce a network between the totality of the human knowledge, the present knowledge. Then, both Deely and Bakhtin relate linguistic with history, human history, and social human history. And there is an agreement on that. Then, of course, that Deely in that is making a philosophical open view about the traditional semiotics before Deely. Deely is trying to make a refutation in some way of the whole semiotic European way through coming from one way, Santo Thomas medieval fundamentals of philosophy, and then with some kind of pragmatics analysis of linguistics that is more related to the tradition in America than in Europe, but that is, of course, very important both for Martin and for Deely. Semiotics, academics, and dialogic. Deely, but then again, the crossover between the dialogics and architectonics. This means the key concept of crossover coming from Martin, and of course, I make some kind of questions about the actual situation. I have a lot of students working in artificial intelligence and about the different linguistic artificial intelligence in relation to design. And at that moment, there is a completely disorientation about what really implies the linguistic analysis when you came from the history of design, or you came from linguistics inside the history of design, or you came from artificial intelligence into the theory of systems based in mostly in mathematics. This is one point now that is the crucial point of theory of design. And there is a disorientation, at least in Barcelona, they have hundreds of students, thousands of students of design that have absolutely no theory about that, and they use the computer all the time without knowing what is the result of the thing. Only in practice, they say. No, it's the practice itself that make if the thing is valid or not. This is very normal now in architecture, in the schools of architecture. Semiotics can be a system of chronotopic social communication, a crossing point between interlocution. We'll see now with Riquel, who will have an analysis of that, both in the body systems, alcoholism. Then this dialogical relation between chronotopes and algorithms is now what the students, they found when they are artists in some way, they found in the design practice, but they don't know what they are doing. They are mixing, but they don't have the idea of how they can control theoretically this. The past of semiotics of architecture that Isabel Marcos knows very well, and I have been president of the Association of Semiotics of Space and Time, founded by Professor Pierre Pellegrino, who just died 1 month ago. And that's a pity because he was an extraordinary animated and extraordinary responsible professor in this association. Without Pellegrino, this association is another thing. And he has been from the beginning never leave the way. He defends the origin of semiotics, especially in French semiotics, but then he make a very open analysis in a lot of publications that, of course, we have no time here to explain. Hundreds of books and articles were written. I have myself a lot of articles also, and participation in a lot of international groups. But, however, I say, the impact of the schools of architecture has been low because of deadlock between architecture and social science in general. Architectural education is architecture is made of real buildings, real users, and this deadlock stopped them and the hermeneutic explanation of architectural plan. This has been very negative. In one way, the association has been very alive, and there are a lot of people now that is working a lot of work. Then, in other way, as a professor of architecture and as a network of schools of architecture, I see that there doesn't exist there, this work. is not an impact. With the section of the School of Architecture in Tunisia from the Alain Renier, that this exception in the sense that half of the professors of this school have made dissertations about semiotics, and I have Pierre Pellegrino made 3 or 4 dissertations. I also make several dissertations, and the professors are there, are accredited as professors. In Barcelona, one professor that is only made semiotics immediately is not accredited because it's not accepted as a theory that is useful for the designers. This is in a lot of schools. Why? This is because of this deadlock. That this deadlock means that professionally architects in some nations more than the other, and in Spain it's one of the that is it's extremely strong. This skepticism about the possibility to make a reflection through the design that really has some academic. We have, of course, some dissertations that are good in Spain, but the professional analysis of design is more political and more professional in a very narrow sense than really academic. This is one problem. This is not only in Spain, and of course there, but in Spain is very strong. And the proof is that in Tunisia, this was breakdown because the semiotics of Alain Renier is an anthropological correlation between physical order and social order, just in the sense of North American semiotics. That's very curious. And then they can make a correlation between the decoupage in the physical and in the social, and this link between social order and physical order through semiotics has been very useful for the dissertation and very useful for the teaching. That means that semiotics is a pedagogical tool, can be a pedagogical tool, but you need, of course, to imply that the social interaction in architecture is fundamental. But at the sense that this is not fundamental, on the contrary, is a problem. The participation of user is a problem. At the moment you put this as a problem, then the whole building of semiotics disappear. And with the semiotics disappear the dialogics, and disappear Bakhtin, disappear everybody. The only thing that resists is Heidegger. Heidegger resists the deadlock, and it's not by chance. Because of course Heidegger is not interested with the user in the phenomenological hermeneutic. The hermeneutics for Heidegger are very controlled because then if you include hermeneutics really in the fantastic philosophy of Heidegger, it is a good philosopher everybody is using, but it has some kind of limitations that fatally, because by a lot of reasons, are very bad for the semiotics of architecture. Disappear. The user, for instance, for a lot of theoreticians, the user of the architect is not the real user. It's some kind of virtual user that is invented by the architects. And then, of course, then the social communication is completely out of interest. Because and then now we have the problem that if the user is virtual in the sense of artificial intelligence, you can do what you want with the real users without taking into consideration the anthropological or the methodological content of the real culture of the user. For that, I say the deadlock. And of course, this is very complicated, but this, if you go now from Bakhtin to Riquet, that uses a lot of Bakhtin, and then Deely will not be against this, but of course there is no connection between all these personalities because the work of Riquet is in architecture is very late. The book of the main book of memory is 2005. There's some kind of no synchronical thing. Then here, interlocution, some works we are doing with it now. It's important to say that the space and semiotic space in this part of interlocution means that the space interacts people in space. Space is a way of intercommunication, but not the same way of linguistic literary things. And this Martin explains very clear and says very clear that the user in literature is not the user in architecture. And explains very clear in a text that the user in architecture is not an aesthetic invention of the architect, but the user in the writing has a strong ideal aesthetical value, and this is the voice. The voices in literature has, and this is no bad. Of course, you can make the metaphorically the use in the other part, but you need to be aware that you cannot transform the user in architecture just in an actor and in aesthetic, like an artistic thing. This is one of the key points now of the artificial intelligence analysis and of the possibility of making mathematical representation of this relation. Then the children, we have worked a lot in Barcelona about that for years and years. The children architecture is a good analysis in order to see how is the power of architecture in the sense of social interaction. Because education, you need to, children are not genius, individual genius that have ideas by themselves. It depends of the education that is with him. And this is two different schools in Barcelona that I say the dialogical thinking and monological thinking. That means that in one school, they teach cooperation, and in other, they don't teach absolutely cooperation. Then in the one, there is this relation, some way, the reconstruction of some kind of codification in the process. Again, this is the point of agreement and discussion between Martin and Deely. This code was before there. This is the first time that they use this material. The code between subject and objects in dialogical cities was previous or is invented with the children at the moment. Of course, there are some kind of the both things can be used, but in this case, there is no sharing code absolutely, and each children is imagine his own city with total autonomy in relation to the others. Then points of view of voices, I use Martin ideas, but it's possible to use also the Deely synthesis about behaviors and objects that make some kind of different organization in a classification of 6 or 10 ways. That this is a lot of times good in one way, but complicated in the other. Then if you use artificial intelligence, this is space syntax, that is pure mathematics, no strange. You see that the enormous differences between the capability, the topological structure. And then you have the mathematical importance that Isabel Marcos now is using in a lot of very sophisticated analysis of mathematics. As you see in different examples, that this is not against absolutely social communication and social gatherings, of course, because this is very different. If you take this where children are collaborating, for the other here that children are not collaborating at all. This is completely, the red is a lot of attachment and possibilities to the points were more related to the others, in terms of topology. And here the topology is the more related places are out of the city. In the city, there is no topological relation like is here, and the blue are the places less related to the others. Then, if you go to the complication of urban design and the different levels of education, here just I don't want you bother a lot about this, but children needs a relation between the physical, the social, and the mental. That is basic in natural culture. Is different in artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence can distort if it's not good use. Here you see that the problems in children that are alone in the white children, not the indigenous children, the white children, the children with excess of virtualization with the computer, and the people that is isolated by Hitler in a concentration camp, and or now we have the example of the sad about the situation now in Russia, is the three situations that are bad environments because there is no social links, bad environments because there are no physical links, only virtual links, and bad environment because there is no mental links, because the Nazi process destroys the mental. No, it's false. No, it's the fake news. The fake news has the same effects that the wild and the effect of excess of activities. That means that there is a solidarity in life and death that is extremely complicated, but this is the key for architectural education. The architectural education and for children and in the schools, they need to check if there is the right social interaction, the right real physical interaction, and the right social, ethical, and non-manipulation of the memory of this is, of course, in this case, completely related to the history. This is the history, and this is the physical, and this is the social lack of affection, for instance, and etc. This combination makes architectural education in one way very interesting for semiotics, another way very complicated. Then there is another, the last person in the lecture is the Professor Ranier Zimmerman, that is a mathematician and a philosopher that starts an analysis of the foundation of the systems, and they say this is the future of the possibility of semiotics in general. He started this 3 years ago. Still, I am waiting the volume 2 and the volume 3. But he says something like that. The coordination between the history of culture, architecture, could allow the cognitive construction of evolutivo general model of the spatial human systematization based upon Bakhtin chronotypes. This is a promise. This is not done in the first volume, but the first volume is analysis between the difference between virtual space, real space, physical space, social space, historical space, that there is now misunderstanding about all that. The concept should be very different in each case. It's not the same, but in the other side, you need to evaluate general model. You need to link all these spaces, as I show in the education, and anthropological studies, like to accept these possibilities in social intersubjectivity, develops in secretly with the physical environment transformation. Yeah, there is a general anthropological believing that move for uses a lot, that there is no independent. You invent something, and this invention arrives to the whole social environment and the historic. There is no independence between technical and historic. And this can be proved. Fantastic analysis of anthropology of 5 million years ago, and all the changes in the human civilization, and you see the synchrony between the invention of very simple things can an enormous effect in social development. That proves that is the idea of Bakhtin and the idea of Zimmerman, that is possible to link the history of culture and architecture is possible, and then that this builds some kind of cognitive construction of evolutive general models that can be mathematical or not. This is the discussion. Should be these models are or not. The role of the study of the correlation transformation of size synthesis involved, they need a lot of work. There is still now there are a lot of groups that are trying to work here, but still it's not easy to analyze this. Like in children, of course, is immediate, but this is not possible to make them. Then two examples, very simple ideas, just for the discussion. And then you have one example is the space syntax of the village in Catalonia, Montblanc, that has almost 1,000 years old. This is the space syntax in the 12th century when Catalonia was independent. And this is the two doors, the two big doors of the, and this is the walls of the and this, the two bigs, one wall, one door going to Barcelona, and the other door going to Valencia. This was a very important political city at the moment. And this is the situation now of the same village. Now the village has a lot of suburban things, but the historical center, and you see that the axis changes from the vertical to the horizontal because they destroyed the two doors. And then there is no doors here. These now, there are pieces of wall that this is real, but there are a lot of pieces are destroyed. Then the nice thing or the bad thing is the discussion here. The city hall is rebuilding the old door here. Then half of the population, of course, the Catalanese population, agree with the city hall. Now they are finishing this very nice new build, completely modern, related to the history. But half of the population says that this door never exists. Then there are two memories completely different. And you can make the analysis, historical analysis, and of course the door was here in the old documents. And the king of Catalonia was entering for this door a lot of times. It's a very important place in terms of history. But half of the population says, no, fake news, this is wrong. And they fight against the city hall. And then at the end, the city hall approved with the help of Catalan government that they have the permission to build. Then you see that in this case, artificial intelligence, this poor mathematics, explains or is some kind of very general macro, but agree with some kind of the social communication, what Zimmerman or Deely says, the possibility to relate all the knowledge of this with some kind of historical reality, and then you have some kind of sign of that. I know that this is very, very rough and is not exactly, but this is in a lot of concrete cases what happens. The form, the architectural form, has a memory, and this memory is not only the past, but also is the future of this form is related to the past. And people in this is extremely strong and extremely, they don't want to believe anything. They are very critical at this point. This door was important for the half of the population that, of course, some of the very, very old the people that was living from the 12th century in the same place, some of them, but there are very few, is not just a thing in terms of natural or genetic or historical genetic thing or cultural genetic. Is much more broad than that. But of course, there is something related to the history, the social history, and to the interpretation of the social history, has relation with semiotics. This is the thing that Zimmerman and Deely wanted to say. There is the connection between historical criticism or the meaning of the things in terms of social history, and then this transformation, graphic representation of that can help. There is another case, different, very different, from painting. That is also a very nice example. This is a painting by Slosky, Robert Slosky, professor in Cooper Union, very good professor of architecture, a friend of all the 5 architects, very appreciated there. And then is the only person that explained to me Picasso. And then explained to me Picasso, and I understood Picasso, because it was very difficult to understand Picasso. To understand the code of the painting is very difficult. And he was able to do that, to explain, and then you see the painting. Without, you don't see anything. But was very good in teaching art, and in teaching art in painting and in architecture. He can explain Le Corbusier fantastically, because he has abstract, all abstract. Then he was making Mondrian and Albers, no? That is very clear, the influence of Maritain. And the paintings, until the last paintings, like this one, were geometrical. Then, starting 15 years ago, 20 years ago, before he died in the 2005, he changed to these paintings. This make of these colors, a bit yellow, brown, this kind of erasing the geometrical poor things. And I said, okay, you should explain this. What is that? He said, well, this is very difficult. Then take Paul Ricoeur, and he was reading Paul Ricoeur by advice in 2000, and then sent to me the last catalog. And the last catalog was all an analysis by different architects of the paintings and his own analysis using Paul Ricoeur ideas. He was enthusiastic of the Paul Ricoeur ideas, and then make an explanation of this painting. This explanation, very long explanation, has some written text related to art in metaphorical way, but this is not an enigmatic, on the contrary. This is the solution of the painting. The solution of the painting is the metaphorical analysis. The canvas conditions painting, the first solution. The screen and landscape from where I have already. Then my experience in the landscape is what I paint in these paintings. Involves the history of painting, such as the color of the earth in Europe. My body and my face, well, etc. Fine analysis, phenomenological analysis, and hermeneutic analysis of the painting. The same that he was doing for me in Picasso, to see things that you cannot see, just looking to the painting. Then, the nice thing to finish is that now there is an exhibit in Philadelphia, that he was director of the School of Art in Philadelphia, the last thing that he was there, several years, director of the school, very important School of Art in Philadelphia. Then they are doing an exhibit of these paintings, and it's incredible, because the main artist and criticism of art, they say that he was the disciple of Mondrian and Albers, and then this is a pity, because the last painting he was wrong. He was a way of modernity. Then you see now, after all these years, out of this analysis of semiotics of history, the explanation that he's doing of his painting now is wrong, because he distorted the modernity. He distorted the history. That of course, they don't care about the catalog. They don't care about the writings of a lot of architects about these paintings. 5 architects about the architects saying it's fantastic, these paintings, just because this is rising. For instance, he says here, I consider the monocolor of abstract art as a need to work in an unknown abstract environment. Before to learn to run, now we can run with all the colors of the earth. That's fantastic idea. The sense that when you say, well, this is more modern because it's black and white. It's more modern because in black and white, one person that need to work in an unknown because the abstract environment was new and was easy to be lost there. Now we know the abstract environment well enough to be abstract with colors. It's not necessary to say no, colors are against. Then he's making the explanation about the artistic representation, and then the critic of art said this is wrong. Is a fake. Because, of course, then if they cannot say that the history is a fake, because this is a writing of different architects, then they say that he is fake. He was wrong. Then this proves the power. I say that, to say the power of semiotics, the mixture between semiotics and history. That is the proposal of Deely and the proposal of Bakhtin, and the proposal of Zimmerman. This mixture is one I think now that is more fundamental. You see here the one dissertation that is still not read, that is almost Sarah Moran from Portugal. That is again the space syntax of a church by Joa Lewiska. No? That is very still lives there in Finland, in Helsinki. Is very nice churches and very nice buildings and housing. This you see here in mathematical view, that this line of visuality, in this case, is not accessibility. This case is visuality analyzed by the machine. The maximum of the visuality is this red line here, is the coincidence with the step of the altar here in relation to the building. Then, of course, that Lewiska is not using artificial intelligence to do that, but natural intelligence to find the maximum of visibility. Of course, you have the altar. In one way, you can have the maximum because the form is complex form. It's not easy to find the maximum visibility possible. Not 100%, but like in a theater. Then this is again some kind of dialogue between the artificial and the natural. And here is my point of the last point of that I wanted to say. Is no contradiction, but you need to make a dialogy. And this Bakhtin is making the proposal, the dialogy in 1920, 100 years ago, no? With an article that was fantastic article, 3 pages of Bakhtin in the first article, 1918, still in the Soviet Revolution, in the revolution that now again is historically meaningful in St. Petersburg. And then he writes an article in comparison of a car, motor engine and machine, and a painting of Picasso. And he was the origin of the whole philosophy of Bakhtin. To see what is the difference. Of course, was a semiotic, very clear difference. Well, the difference between a machine, a car, and a painting of Picasso. That in the difference is that you can change the measure of the pieces. You can make more bigger one piece another in the car, and this does not change the whole machine. The machine is not sensitive to the color of the pieces of the machine, to the exact situation, to the micro analysis of because the machine especially needs to work, and you can change everything to maximize the work. But in Picasso, you cannot change absolutely nothing of the color, of the size, and of the form of the painting. any small change in the painting changes the whole meaning of the painting. This is not true in the machine. This difference, that means a structural semiotic basic difference for Bakhtin, and I think for Deely also in an indirect way, is the basic distinction to find how to make a linguistic analysis of the structure of communication, intersubject functional communication, making the right difference you need to do. Nothing against geometry, nothing against mathematics, nothing against, on the contrary, without this fantastic church of Leviska, without the geometry, it's completely impossible to build it. And without the construction, this is not, and without the tradition of Finnish centers, because of course the church in Finland is not the same church that in all the other countries in Europe. For a lot of historical, climate, and cultural reasons, the churches are at the same time in schools, and at the same time as a club of social point of encounter, etc., as this school, this church is. That is, there are a lot of things here and a lot of spaces related. It's not only the big religious thing, but also has a lot of relation with social use and with education. Then this means that the proposal, utopical proposal of Deely, and the proposal of Bakhtin, and the proposal of Sirman to say that this is possible, to make this connection between history, design, linguistic, and if you mix not only the physical part, but of course the physical and the social part. For that, it says, oh, but Bakhtin is obsessed for that. He's obsessed for that, but then I accept that the code is a code of this church is the church. Is the church. It's not another thing. It's the church. And that is the wood is for that space that can help in some ways in some aspects. Of course, it's very limited, the way now we are using artificial intelligence. There are other more sophisticated processes now, like with mathematics that are much more complicated than the mathematics that is in the space syntax. In some way is not very complicated, but there are other now linguistic analysis that are much more subtle. But then this is not to say that we need to design with this, because the collaboration between natural brain and the virtual thing should be kept in dialogical way. And then we have the big problem that there are a lot of students of architecture that they need that if they study the neurological networks, then they will be fantastic architects, because they make a direct connection between neurological, physical forms in the brain with of course, transformations in terms of mathematical analysis. And then they say that this helps him to make sometimes very extraordinary, but buildings or with buildings that they don't know how is this connection. They ignore completely how to connect that. They just say imitation of neurological thing in dissertations, in PhD dissertations, without knowing if it's really working in this way or not, empirically. This is the supposition. Okay, well, then means that this connection between social history and meaning of design is now a developing thing that is in a lot of different countries are working and in a lot of dissertations. But in all this case, and now it's not the philosophical foundation of all that is still very weak and very liquid. They asked the Association of Hermeneutics, the philosopher, Association of Hermeneutics, asked for me to make a chapter. They want to make a book about architecture as hermeneutics. And they are looking for people, and who is this people? Alasma, is Frampton, and myself, and others that will be in the way, because they discovered that perhaps architects will help philosophers to understand what is going on here, not in the other way. I think that is, again, dialogy. It's not that architects will solve architects, the philosophers will solve architects. It's the dialogue that's important. It's the dialogical analysis. The problems that found the hermeneutics philosophers, they have a lot of work on that, of hermeneutics of art, hermeneutics of architecture. But then, of course, architects are worried about the way the results then are criticized. And then the capability to criticize the actual buildings needs a good philosophical hermeneutic thing, and at the same time needs good architects and good architecture. Is this combination that I think that was the combination that was predicted in some way by Deely and by Maritain without knowing perhaps exactly what is going on. But this is also in architecture. There are a lot of architects, they are using modern architecture and they are learning from Wright, or are learning from Gaudí, or are learning now for Miralles without knowing really what they are doing. They are just copying many things. But to understand really the architecture of it's as difficult as the philosophy of hermeneutics. I think this is just the situation now that for me is very interesting, because that allows to a dialogue between different disciplines. And mathematics here has an important role, but also philosophy, and also sociology, and also semiotics. Each discipline has the power, limited power, and architecture also is limited. It's very nice, that is the last idea, very nice to see that Deely has very clear this, and says that this combination between history, semiotics, and mathematics, and linguistics should not be taking semiotics as a general universal rule. No, he says no. Semiotics is a tool needed to do this, but it's not the general system that commands the whole thing. No, it's one thing, but nobody commands the whole thing in some way for Deely, as in Maritain also. It's not that this is commanded for God or for the natural forces. It's just that is shared for the problem from different disciplines, and they should make a synthesis, but the synthesis inter different disciplines, not to take one of these as the only one. That will be agree with Aristotle in a very philosophical way. That says that this is possible to have a general science, because this general science, nobody can know that is true or is false, because it is really general. There is no way to say if it's really important. It should be a combination of different disciplines in order to know which is the science that can help more. Well, this is the end of the proposal. I think that there is nothing here. Yeah. Then you have the possibility to make all kinds of comments. And this can have been a provocation about the limits of semiotics of architecture and the possibilities. No, I don't believe that. I have been president of the association. I am also participating in the Association of Semiotics of Architecture. I never believe that is the only thing that should be make a general science only with semiotics. But this combination, I think, very good of Deely, that accepted that is needed semiotics as a general theory of linguistics in combination, and he says, reveals the centrality of history in relation to the totality. I like a lot this idea and the basics of semiotics. Reveals the centrality of history just because it's very general has the concepts are very like the concept of sign, or they can go to the roots of the between different. That is the idea also of Heidegger in some way, but that Ricoeur criticizes that Heidegger planify the problem and then he goes out of the problem immediately. He is not making the work. He says that this work should be done. This work of the human CSD with the common rule, this work should be done. It's not automatic, this work. There is no machine to do this. The whole intellectual force of the world, the men should do this work. It's not that is done automatically. It's necessary to do the work, to see these connections. And then if semiotics is the best tool for a criticism and can be very good for evaluation of art, music, literature, has Deely, I will put architecture also, but Deely is not putting architecture here in the basics of semiotics, because of course it's a very difficult object, where the free of the mind and the context will be something. But this is what now is needed in architectural education and in general in architectural practice and theory, to see this connection. That is never the imitation of the history, no, and the tradition, imitation of tradition, no, is a thing completely different thing. But that if the criticism now in Barcelona is zero. The criticism of architecture in Barcelona is zero. I have to be a lot of reviews to make magazines. Now there is no magazines of criticism of art in Barcelona because, of course, it's a danger. It's very dangerous. You see how that it's a danger to do criticism of the architecture. Then nobody is doing this, and then there is a decay about the quality. The real quality is in decay because there is only practice, design practice and praxis. Design not only in architecture, design in cinema, design in environmental videos, design in comics, and the same person that design in comics and in films and in interior design and is the same profession. They do everything, starting from comics, go to cinema, the cinema go to environmental theater, and then go to interior design, and this is design in general. This has a very good aspect on it, of the interversality, and a very bad aspect. There is absolutely no theoretical framework of that. It's just practice. Okay, then the semiotics can be a tool, yes, but should be developed a very careful theoretical frameworks to make this possible and to clarify the different levels between the virtuality, physical and social, in a very clever way. And this is a problem for the philosophers, for the anthropologists, for the social criticists, for everybody, like we see in the world now, sadly, that is a disorientation and a lot of fake news all the time. And each interpretation of history has a completely different meaning of an object, has a completely different meaning in relation to the people. You can talk to people, and then the same object has different meanings. That has absolutely no relation, because they link with the social history in a completely different way. And with the computer now, this is very easy to do. With television and with this is very fast. Then there is no time to analyze the truth. It's very difficult then in the children the same. They teach the children how they to see this. Well, this is the semiotics of criticism. Now is a key point. Okay, that's all. Questions now.
Can I make some questions, some comments?
So, Professor Isabel, sorry for interrupting you. I would like to introduce you before you share your commentaries and questions, okay?
Okay.
So, Professor Josep Muntañola, thank you so much for your lecture. Gracias, muchas gracias. So allow me to very briefly to introduce you, Professor Isabel, okay? So Isabel Marcos is architect and semiotician, Senior Research Fellow of CICS.NOVA, Interdisciplinary Center of Social Sciences, FCSH, at the Nova University of Lisbon. She received a PhD in Semiotics from the Aarhus University, Denmark, and a PhD in Communication Sciences from the Nova University of Lisbon, Portugal. Her major publications are Semiotics of Space, and I'll sorry for my Semiotics of Space and Spaces of Semiotics. And I'll sorry for my French, pronunciation of my French, Espace, Semiotique et Cognition, la sémiotique de l'espace-temps face à l'accélération de l'histoire, and Dynamics de la Ville, Essays de Semiotique de l'Espace. She is the author of articles, book chapters, conference papers, and guest editor of international editions such as Degree, Spatial Semiotics, and Arachne, Visual Semiotics. She is vice president of the International Association for Visual Semiotics and member of the Executive Committee of the World Association of Semiotics, national representative of Portugal. So thank you, Professor Isabel, and you can share with us your questions and insights.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Muntañola, this very inspiring conference. And you show us very, very well our kind of perspective on semiotics of architecture through this reference that you cited as Pellegrino, Renier, and of course you. And I could witness since 80. I was at that time I was a student in architecture in 1988 in the World Association Congress in Barcelona. It was there I met Muntañola and all the persons that worked on semiotics of space, and I was so attracted for this discipline that I began my journey in that times. Yes. And I saw all along this time the fundamental contributions of Professor Muntañola on this discipline, who has a lot of difficulties in Iberians
environment.
Yes, there is really a kind of now I'm thinking in French. There is a kind of impossibility of semiotic of space in the schools of architecture in Portugal and Spain, and I'm very admirative because when the International Association of Semiotic of Space has you know, a moment of you know, they stopped a little bit. Professor Muntañola created a very, very interesting idea, a kind of network architectonics, who calls Mind, Land, and Society. And this network became a reference not only in the field of the semiotics of space, but also in the field of theory of architecture. And this I'm sorry that I'm doing this kind of historicity, but it's very important to understand how this thinking of Muntañola is important in the semiotic of space. I was very interested on the research on children vision on architecture and city, as I think is a very fundamental step on the discovery of elements of language of space, and also I don't know if I can say that, but you begin to develop a general theory of language on space. I don't know if I understood well, but I think it's really the beginning of a kind of syntax of space of architecture. And I have two questions. One is about the scheme that you show on recurrent dialogical space on time. I think that scheme can summarize very well your analysis, the way of looking on space. And I have another question. I was very interested on this idea of that architectural form keep not only the memory for understanding history, but it concerns also the deployment of future forms. I don't know if you can develop a little bit more this idea.
Yeah, well, need to change and go out of here, but yeah, no. You can take out my my video. Eh? Can you? Because I need to see myself in some way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want that I share the scheme?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the head of the group that make this? No, take because it's difficult to talk black and black. You can take out.
Okay.
Take out the.
Okay.
My video.
Okay.
Okay. You can take out the video?
I'm not sure that I understand.
Yeah, no, because now I am in the main in the screen. I want to see myself.
Okay. I
to
don't know.
take out this. I will explain that, but
do you want that I show the scheme or not?
ha detenido su video. Well, no, but I can do nothing now. Now, okay. Then we can share the video. Then that you can now put the compartir, but all the mosaico here. Reacciones. Well, okay. I am here in some place. Yeah, now Muntañola video. Okay, now I am here. Then I answer you. Yeah, if not, it's extremely difficult to talk in the screen. Well, I put in my video was some point that I put the network architectonics, mind, line, and society, education, architecture, and social relations. That is the key point in the whole thing. This is a network that is working. There is a congress each year, and now there is another congress, and there's different students. Of course, all the congress, we make some kind of 120 dissertation, PhD dissertations. These are now around the world, the heads of schools, heads of departments, and this is the people that now is and it's very interesting to see how one of these dissertations on phenomenological memory, for instance, the memory, there is a fantastic 15 years ago, 20 years ago, dissertation about memory and architecture, and the professor in Venezuela that is doing this now has developed in a methodology, fantastic methodology of design to the students linking mind, line, and society. It's very nice projects that there is no problem to include the social relations inside the design process of the student, but they need to be prepared, they need to read some text, and this is the consequences of the dissertation. No? And then, but the dissertations should be very conceptually clear, no? And this is the difficult thing, because normally they are very dark. But if it's clear, then 50 years after, this professor is talking exactly with the same clarity he has in the dissertation, and the whole school of architecture changed in this case and a lot of other cases. Then this is the network. Then you talk about the 1906 meeting in Barcelona, about the meeting of the architects in the city at the same time. This was, everybody was there. No? Of course, Pellegrino was there, and was there a lot of people. Rappaport, very different people. Now, yeah, when I take the list, I say, but everybody was here, because it was the meeting of architects at the same time. And this was a combination. Now, in the 26, we have again the same situation now in Barcelona. Is the 30 years after. Now, the Association of Architects, the AIA, the Worldwide Association, is organizing the meeting in Barcelona because it's 100 years of the death of Gaudí. And this was and the building was not built finished probably in 26. But the idea that it will be finished, and then this has been the one of the reasons of this new international meeting. At that time was Peter Eijsman coming, and a lot of now will be another big famous architect in the world that will come to Barcelona. But then, of course, if I can do, I can work, my health is not preventing me not to do. I will organize an international 30 years after this, another one with the similar thing about the relation was semiotic, social science, and architecture. Was now will be similar according to the situation of the 26, but it's in terms of memory. Then there is two questions on PC. one first consideration is this diagram about the space and time of Riquer is the summary of the last book of Riquer, Memory. I take all the things from this book. Mm-hmm. That is the last synthesis about the space and time, talking about architecture, talking about history, talking about memory, and he make already this connection of the memory that is at the same time the future and the past. This is a very difficult subject, that's very nice. And this, it's a philosophical, a specific Riquer ability to do that. That is the combination between phenomenology and hermeneutics. No? And then he make fantastic writings, starting with Husserl, following Gadamer, then following different philosophers, and then himself at the end, but always starting and Heidegger. But Heidegger always is a problem because it's after Husserl, but it's not Husserl at all. Then, but has a very important apportations, and then Riquer is very careful on that, not to make critics for political reasons. Of course, there is a strong difference between Husserl was Jew. The first thing that Heidegger did is to eliminate Husserl for the University of Berlin, of course, when was the head of the university with Hitler. Then, but Riquer says, okay, the one thing is philosophy, the other is politics, but inside the philosophy also find some limitations in this connection between phenomenology and hermeneutics. Is not enough. Heidegger is very weak on that. Gadamer is better, and then he tries to be better again. Because this is the key point to see the linguistic systems in architecture, this space and time, Riquer, architecture and literature, and then the memory. It's the same problem. You ask the same question on the bottom.
Yes.
Then
I know.
I will answer the same question. The same question is the following. The answer is, at that moment, that is the conclusion of the lecture also, is that the idea that this is a very difficult problem for architects also to understand, and it's related to the virtual and the real user. No, it's completely related to that. By a lot of circumstances, this point of the theory of architecture that links languages, memory, spatial time, phenomenology, it's a very key point. No, and for me, the only way to understand what is going on here was the children epistemological Piagetian work. That for people, it's just a thing about, well, its ability is epistemological. No, the power of Piaget analysis is not only epistemological. I can speak some pieces, but it's much more than epistemological. It's even Piaget says it's only epistemological, and he don't want to say that he's also philosophy is a revolution, but it is much more than that. In order to understand what is going on in this problem, the Piaget was a very good point of because the key, the Zimmerman starts with Piaget. The first chapter of the theory of systems is Piaget completely, and then you understand that the Piaget is not only pedagogical or some kind of psychogenetic expert, very strange in children. No, it's much more. Was a very important theoretician of the systems, not only this. This is because what is the Riquet is making here, that is a very difficult thing, and he did in the first book of the second tome of hermeneutics. He wants to make a very clear connection between hermeneutics and philosophy. That means between knowledge and social history and social experience and personal experience. This link is the link of Husserl. That is very subtle. And he made, for me, the best analysis of this in this writing. That is a bit difficult, is for that in some way is not used. The thing is, when you say at that moment how to relate the freedom of my knowledge with the freedom of the other person that is different. No? How to link this? This is the point. Intersubjectivity, it's a contradiction because it's two subjectivities. The subjectivities, by definition, are different, but then they need semiotically to connect linguistically. How they connect it, they are so different. Then how the phenomenology, that is the real experience of the subject, can have an hermeneutic bridge, because the hermeneutic, by definition, means common law between the two subjects, no? And this is the key point in Husserl, that after in Heidegger is not solved. It's just, Riquet says, is just put in the existential point, that the same, that is very good, because in the same means that the existence is hermeneutic. Heidegger take the idea of Husserl that to be existent is to be hermeneutic. That's good, but then stops. Doesn't explain how this hermeneutic links with this phenomenology, and this is what the work, enormous work of Riquet, that there is connection between hermeneutics and the phenomenology is hermeneutic is phenomenology. But then the link of Heidegger, that is fantastic for architects, because we discovered the link that we are not phenomenologists, we are also intellectual hermeneutic. We have knowledge, and we can, with this knowledge, make very nice places to live people there. No? For architects, this was understood as a big advance, and also for Riquet. But this big advance doesn't start the right way then to develop what do you say, a linguistic or semi-linguistic. It should be an hermeneutical systems that make this dialogue between hermeneutics and phenomenology. But this stops with Heidegger. Then he has made a very long way to arrive to the memory book. In the middle, there are a lot of books, and there is a lot of hypotheses. But the main point is to start with Husserl. That at the end, Husserl, what they say, that is the difficult point to understand. There is no contradiction between my freedom and knowledge and the freedom of the knowledge of the other. That is completely different. There is no contradiction. Because at the moment I am conscious of the thing that I experiencing, when I have made some kind of phenomenological reflection with my own, at the same moment, I accept that the other also has the same. I understood that the other has also conscience. To be conscious is to understand that the other has conscience. This is extremely important. There is no contradiction to know that I am conscious with the understood that the other has also conscience. No, there is no contradiction. That is the idea of the general phenomenology. Is not the individual phenomenology is one thing, is different. Each one has different. But then there is the Gadamer idea of the horizon of the phenomenology. That means that there is no contradiction to know that I am a human, because at the same time I know that the other is human. The problem with Heidegger is that he was not interested in this point of view, because of course Germans are not human. Jews. The Jews are not human. That was very clear. The Germans are human, but the Jews no, because they are killing the Jews. Then this point, to clarify this, was very far from the intention of Heidegger. But Husserl starts with this. Then it is a contradiction between this point. And Riquet analyzed this very deeply, and it's very nice. It's for that I use Bakhtin, because Bakhtin arrives to the same point for a different philosophy that is it has some kind of shortcut from Kant. The idea of Bakhtin, that is all around architectonics, dialogics, I am singular because everybody is singular. I am not singular because I am a genius and I am different. No, you are not singular because you are different. You are singular because you are equal of other men that are singular of. It's a very nice philosophy that was not understood at the beginning, but now that is used in a lot of. Then dialogic has sense because the dialogic with the different people that should be different, and there's no problem that is different because all human beings, by definition, are different and singular because the other are singular and different. It's a very similar analysis of Husserl, but he never uses Husserl back then. It's going directly from Kant to the neo-Kantian. Well, this means that the memory you ask and the relationship between the knowledge and history, it needs a completely development, a new development and a new completely different way. That is the way that Riquet is trying to do, and is the way asking me the Association of Philosophers to explain. Because what he is saying, Riquet says that from the way of view of memory, to recall something is an invention. It's not a copy of the past. It's an invention. It's a process of invention. You work to find the things that you recall. It's a work. It's not an automatic thing. The brain needs to work. I see somebody, I know that I know this person, but I don't know who is. In order to know who is this person, I need to situate in the history. And then at the moment, I know who is, and I recall. Then my recall something is not an automatic as a machine, and is not an imitation of some kind of previous experience. It's experimental process and is in some way an innovation. I found that to found, and then with Freud, this is very clear for Riquet, that includes Freud in the whole analysis, not only social phenomenology, but also Freud is inside the Riquet thing, in the sense that this memory, the force of this memory, because we have always prejudgments, and there is no conscience or something without prejudgment, and there is no thinking without feeling and with a lot of things. This is a complementary thing. This makes the history of human culture much more complex and sophisticated than before, and then makes memory not recalling the thing that was before, but in some way interpretation of the history, and interpretation, for instance, of the things that were not there but could be there. Right? This possibility that now artificial intelligence is working not to put the things that people want, but perhaps the things that people could want or could have. No? This now there is a lot of immersion on that. You know, this is very important, but because of course they discovered that Riquet is right. The history is not the history only of the real thing, but also the history of the virtuality that is inside the narration, the historical narration. That means that for Riquet, architecture has a specific. If you see the historical analysis as an experiment, as an innovation, and not as a repetition, but as some kind of work, like in the Freud, the trauma of the father, and that is a work. To the sublimation of that for Riquet is important in phenomenology. Phenomenology is not only Heidegger, and not only Hegel, no, it's more than things. There are more things here. There are the whole process of affection, the process of social. Now we see in the world of that is Russia, there are a lot of unconscious things there. Everybody has a different interpretation of the thing because it depends of the life of each one. And the experience of each one. Experience is then extremely important for architecture, then the previous experience. And then the student, you see that in relation to the previous experience is different. Then the memory is mixed with experience. The memory is mixes virtual with reality. Is a work. Then if this is true, these things that I say that the definition, mysterious definition of Deely and of Zimmerman, that there is a coincidence here. No? This history semiotics, they are working in this point. They're trying to work in there. And then when they make an article, Zimmerman has made an article, the OD and the public spaces, they try to connect this and then they try to analyze that this connection is not against mathematics or is not against the artificial intelligence, but is not enough, the artificial intelligence, to find this link. You need to make the work. This is the same. The work means to see if what is the social history of these people, what is the origin of this expectation of people, what is what the architect as a promise, for instance. No, my student in Venezuela is talking about each design of a student is a promise or something. It's a promise or something in relation to the history, but also in relation to a change to the future of the system, to the history in Venezuela or in the place where the building is made. She teaches students of architecture to evaluate the proposal as a promise, as a social promise, but really within a structure, in function and in relation to the memory of the student and to the memory of the place where the thing is not there, and the relation between the professors in the school, and everything is there. No, that was in the then this process that is the relation between hermeneutics and that is some way that phenomenology has a hermeneutic structure and hermeneutics has a phenomenological structure. No? This dialogue between both, that is the building in some way, this is the text, the written text. This is it depends on a general system, or it has a linguistic structural core. That is you say I've been always a bit skeptical to find this. I work on that a lot of times, different systems. No? They say, well, perhaps there are 3 systems, 4 systems. Deely make 6 different ways of semiotic communication. It's a way this general, but I don't believe a lot this, because when you have the 6, is very nice model, but how do you use this model in reality? What is the part of the, and David Simon is making the same, different kind of social interaction in the basic fundamental way, trying to analyze a linguistic and methodology in social interaction. And then Riquet uses only Hegel. And then is affection, social interaction, really, and legal, and loss. Affection, loss, that is the structure of Hegel. I think that is so complex, this theme, as simply a way that we can do the better. No? If we find a very simple graduation about social interaction, that is feeling and love, and then social strategies, and then law, is enough. It's very complicated. This more to put 6 is to put very difficult. For the designer, this should be applied in a very direct way. And of course, almost is artistic, scientific, and political way. That's very, very general. Then mathematics can help, yes, if it's related to this in some way. Or artificial intelligence then can help. But is language then architecture? With one more important thing here, to finish with the question, with the 3 questions. Is language, but is a language of interlocution. That means that in a space, in real life, we mix completely literary things with architectural things. We are not making a splitting between space and time. We live in space and time at the same time. And this is the reality. But this, I say, is a black hole. We cannot represent this totally. We need to represent part of it. And then literature is one part, dancing can be another, cinema can be another. This is partial, there's not real. And this is very nice because you see, for instance, everybody is using Netflix, no? Everybody is using the television films. How they will last? Perhaps in 1 year they disappear. Oh, the video disappeared in the schools, and perhaps the video that is in representation. But we are enthusiastic that this is a very good representation of life. I don't know. Perhaps it's a very boring representation, and in the end, this kind of representation will disappear. Nobody will pay Netflix for 100 years. No, that means that the presentation is, in some way, is a reduction of the virtual space. Is a reduction. Then doesn't mean that architecture is not important in the interpretation of the human culture. Yeah, it's very important, but it's also to say no, but this is everything. No, it's not everything. I think there should be, but then has specificities. And this is the important thing for architects. They need to know that architecture is, in some aspects, can behave as a language, but like space syntax, like multi-agents, like Renault, Grass Cooper, okay, but these are partial of the reality. It's not a representation of all. It's different points of representation. It's interpretation for different environments, virtual environments. And then should be very careful not to put that is one, that is the only one, because then it's a disaster. It's like a mathematician that wants to, the life that has very big problems in the family if he uses all the mathematicians as a general rule for everything. That means that, yes, it can be systematized as a semiotic system, but in partial way, as Alain Renier did, and you are doing in some way, because they use random ideas to represent reality is good, but it's partial. So we say, no, everything is there. No, it's a very fundamental structure there. That is the structure of the process of the catastrophic forms, etc. That is very important, but there is not the representation of everything, because then disappear the use in terms of pragmatic use. It should be carefully done, this. And the interlocution concept that is related to intersubjectivity, of course, in phenomenology, for me is good, because that means that there is, and this is very related to phenomenology, not only Ricoeur, Kaufman, and a lot of other French, especially, that and Merleau-Ponty, but then this interlocutive process is social and very related to social values and to educative values a lot. This is extremely social interaction. And this is the thing that I think that is more interested now in the expert philosophy and mathematicians are analyzing this, how architects doing that, how they can have this, use the memory to forecast the behavior of people in common after, no? How this is possible, because the architects have done this. The good architects make a place, and then this place has life for a lot of time and changes social life, and the place is useful for years. They should be adapted, but the power is the memory power of future is very important. And then others, no. Other architects, you see that this is going down, the building is all and less useful. And then these processes are very important to analyze, these processes in semiotic and historical way. And then you see that is the idea of Zimmermann, this is not so impossible to do. You cannot find the truth, but you can find some kind of regulations, and you can find some kind of, when they say, definitive places. These places are like design that seems that is right to be very completed, very at the end. That and last, well, this kind of things is what I think that, like the chronotopic concept, is this one, is structures that last. And then Shakespeare uses it a lot of times, but there's a lot of years after they work, they are useful, even if it changes the civilization. But the chronotop is useful in this text always. Is the text with the chronotop, is not chronotop. Is the system has some kind of structures that have in some way have the memory inside. No, this is the thing that now can be done in architecture. Okay. Long answer. Questions.
Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Okay, so can I open, Professor Isabel, can I open the floor to the audience, or do you have any more questions?
No, of course.
No.
Okay, so thank you. So the floor is open. Anyone in the audience who has